weeks ago and I still can't wrap my head around it. I've gone over it 100 times, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, but I know it was. I can't explain everything that happened, but I'll do my best. It started on a random Tuesday night. I was in the rougher part of town. It wasn't exactly where I planned to end up, but I had been out late and took a wrong turn. The streets were empty, and the streetlights flickered like something out of a bad horror movie. I was just about to head back when I noticed this little thrift shop tucked into the corner of a block. The neon sign above it buzzed faintly, flashing the word open, even though it felt like no one had been there in years. I'm a collector of weird, obscure stuff. Old books, vintage toys, even a few creepy artifacts. So of course, I decided to check it out. The shop was as sketchy as you'd expect. The air smelled musty and everything inside looked like it had been sitting there for decades. Shelves were crammed with random junk. Old clocks, chipped mugs, a collection of mismatched porcelain dolls with missing eyes. Behind the counter was an older guy with greasy hair and a face that screamed, "Don't ask too many questions." I was about to leave when I spotted a small box on the floor labeled VHS, $1 each. I don't even know why I bothered looking. I don't have a working VCR. Who even uses VHS tapes anymore? But one of them caught my eye. There were 3 tapes, each with handwritten labels. Asylum, Honeymoon, Investigator. The titles immediately stood out to me. They sounded like something out of an underground horror series. I asked the guy at the counter about them and he just smiled. A weird crooked smile. And said, "They are a good watch." That should have been my first red flag. But curiosity got the better of me, so I bought all 3. When I got home, I realized I hadn't used my old VCR in years. I dug it out of the attic, covered it in dust and cobwebs, and hooked it up to my TV. To my surprise, it still worked. I decided to watch the tapes in order. I popped in the first one, Asylum, and hit play. The footage begins grainy, with static flickering at the edges of the screen. You can tell it's old, probably filmed on one of those handheld camcorders from the early 2000s. The image wobbles as the person holding the camera adjusts the focus, bringing the scene into view. A group of 5 friends stands in front of a massive, decaying building. It's an asylum, or at least that's what one of them says. You can barely make out the words because of the muffled audio, but the camera's operator, who seems to be the most eager of the bunch, is narrating. "This is it, guys. The famous asylum at Ridgewood Forest. They say no one's been inside in over 30 years. Pretty creepy, huh?" His voice is steady, but you can sense the excitement. The asylum looms behind him, massive and decrepit. The windows are shattered, some of them boarded up with planks that have long since warped and rotted. Ivy creeps up the walls, and the entire structure looks like it's being swallowed by the surrounding forest. The camera pans to the others. There's a short girl with glasses who looks like she doesn't want to be there. "I don't know, guys," she mutters. "This feels wrong." Next to her is Mark, tall and sarcastic, holding a crowbar like it's his badge of honor. "Relax, Ellie," he says, grinning. "It's just an old building. What's the worst that could happen? Ghosts?" He laughs. But Ellie doesn't. The others seem somewhere between excited and hesitant. The quiet one of the group carries a flashlight and sticks close to Nina, who is recording with her phone. The camera follows them as they step inside, their footsteps crunching over broken glass and debris. The inside is worse than the outside. The floor is littered with scraps of paper, rusted bread frames, and crumbling tiles. Graffiti covers the walls, some of it crude, some of it oddly intricate. "Look at this," the cameraman says, zooming in on one piece of graffiti. It's a large eye painted in black, with the words "We see you" scrawled underneath. "Charming," Mark mutters. They move deeper into the asylum, their voices echoing in the empty halls. The air feels thick, almost tangible, like the building itself is watching them. Every creak of the floorboards makes them pause, their flashlights darting to the shadows. The camera lingers on the details. A wheelchair tipped on its side in one corner, its wheels rusted stiff. A hallway filled with broken mirrors, each shard reflecting their pale faces as they pass. a tattered straitjacket hanging from a hook, swaying slightly as if disturbed by a breeze. "Alright," Mark says, stopping in front of a large metal door. It's massive, rusted and locked with several thick padlocks. "This has gotta be the basement, right?" Ellie looks visibly uncomfortable. "Why would we go down there?" she asks, her voice cracking. "We've already seen enough." Mark doesn't listen. He pulls out the crowbar and starts prying at the locks. The others watch, some protesting weakly, but no one stops him. After a few minutes, the last lock falls with a clatter, and Mark pushes the door open. The camera captures the stairway leading down into darkness. It's steep, narrow, and smells of mildew. "Ladies first," Mark jokes, but no one laughs. They descend slowly, their flashlights barely cutting through the blackness. The sound of their footsteps echoes unnaturally, like the stairs go on forever. When they finally reach bottom, the camera pans around the room. It's a large concrete space with water dripping from the ceiling. Chains hang from the walls, some of them attached to shackles. "What the hell is this place?" Nina whispers. The answer comes a moment later. "Help us." A voice croaks from the darkness. The camera jerks as the cameraman whirls around, his flashlight illuminating the source of the voice. It's a man, thin and dirty, chained to the wall. His clothes are ragged and his face is gaunt, but his eyes are wild with fear. "Please," he begs, "get us out of here." The camera swings again, revealing two more people chained up in similar states. They're all pleading, their voices desperate. Ellie screams. "We need to call the police," she says, pulling out her phone. "No signal," Josh replies, holding up his own phone. Mark rushes forward, fumbling with the chains. "We can break these," he says, looking around for something to use. That's when they hear it. Heavy footsteps coming from the stairwell. The camera whips around, pointing toward the stairs. At the top, silhouetted against the faint light from above, are figures. They're wearing masks. Not Halloween masks, but plain, white ones, featureless except for the eye holes. The figures don't speak. They just stand there for a moment, staring down at the group. Then one of them starts descending, followed by another and another. The camera shakes as the cameraman stumbles back, his breathing loud and panicked. "Go, go, go," Mark yells, dropping the crowbar and grabbing Ellie's arm. The group scrambles for the stairs, but the masked men are faster. One of them reaches the bottom and lets out a guttural grunt like an animal. The footage becomes chaotic. The camera swings wildly as the group tries to escape. Flashlights bob up and down, illuminating brief glimpses of the basement. The terrified faces of the chained people, the masked men closing in, the crowbar lying forgotten in the ground. Nina screams as one of the masked men grabs her arm. She twists free and runs, but the camera catches the moment the man turns his head, locking eyes with the lens. The cameraman stumbles, the image tilting sideways as he falls. The camera hits the ground, but it keeps recording. The last thing you see is the masked men running toward the camera, their footsteps thunderous. One of them lets out a low, guttural growl as he lunges forward. Then the screen goes black. There's a faint hiss of static, and then the tape ends. The first tape was unsettling. At first I thought it was just some amateur horror movie, poorly shot, shaky camera work, weird angles. But the longer I watched, the more real it felt. Too real. The kind of real that makes your stomach churn. When it ended, I sat there in silence. My living room felt darker than it should have, and I swear I heard something outside my window. I got up to check, but it was just a stray cat knocking over a trash can. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I almost didn't watch the second tape. I thought about just throwing them all away, but my curiosity got the better of me. I convinced myself that I was overreacting and put in the next tape, Honeymoon. It starts like most old home videos, grainy, cheerful, and brimming with that unmistakable warmth of a couple in love. The tape begins with a shot of the ocean, shimmering in the distance as the sun sets. The camera pans shakily to reveal a man in his late 20s, grinning wide. Day one of the honeymoon. he says, his voice giddy. We finally made it. He turns the camera to a woman sitting next to him on the edge of a rocky beach. She waves shyly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Say hi to future us, the man teases, zooming in on her face. She laughs and pushes the camera away. Hi future us, we are probably watching this when we're old and boring. The scene cuts to them walking along a wooded trail. They're holding hands, the camera bouncing lightly as the man films their feet crunching over gravel. There is nothing eerie yet, just the two of them laughing, pointing out birds and marveling at how peaceful the area is. This place is perfect, the woman says at one point, spinning in a circle to show the expanse of trees around them. The camera follows her. The footage transitions abruptly to the next day, with the couple sitting on the porch of their Airbnb. It's a cozy, rustic cabin surrounded by dense forest. The camera's audio picks up birds chirping and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Day 2, the man says, turning the camera to himself. He looks well rested and content. We're about to head out and explore the town. Coffee first though. The next few clips are mundane. Shots of them drinking lattes at a quaint cafe, browsing a little shop filled with handmade crafts, and walking through a small farmer's market. It's when they leave the market that things start to feel off. The man films his wife walking ahead of him, holding a bouquet of sunflowers she bought at the market. He stops abruptly and turns the camera to the left, zooming in on a figure standing across the street. It's a man in a dark jacket, wearing a plain white mask. What's that guy doing? The man whispers, though his wife doesn't seem to hear. The figure doesn't move, he just stands there staring. Babe, he calls out, lowering the camera. When she turns around, the masked figure is gone. Nothing, he mutters, shaking his head. The video cuts to the next clip. They're walking through a park now, the camera catching glimpses of towering trees and the occasional jogger. The wife is talking animatedly about dinner plans when the man abruptly stops filming her and zooms in on another masked figure. This one sitting on a bench facing away from them. Okay, this is weird, he says. What is? He doesn't answer, but the camera lingers on the figure for a moment before cutting to black. The next scene starts with them back at the cabin. The atmosphere feels different. The man is filming himself in the bathroom mirror, his expression serious. Okay, he says, his voice low. So we've been seeing these people all day. I don't know if it's some kind of prank or what, but it's freaking us out. He turns the camera toward the bedroom, where his wife is sitting on the bed, scrolling through her phone. Should he call someone? She asks. Call who? He replies. It's not illegal to wear a mask. The video cuts again. Day 3 begins with a shaky clip of them packing their bags. We are cutting this trip short, the man says, his tone hurried. This was supposed to be our honeymoon, but it's turning into a nightmare. His wife is visibly distressed, pacing in the background. They're following us, she says, almost to herself. The camera cuts to a view from the car as they drive down a narrow road. The trees blur by, and the only sound is the hum of the engine. Do you think we are overreacting? The man asks, glancing at his wife. She doesn't answer, just stares out the window. The next clip is at night. The camera pans around the dark cabin as the man whispers, "We're back, just grabbing the rest of our stuff before we leave for good." The tension is palpable. Every creak of the floorboards seems amplified. The camera shakes slightly as he moves toward the front door where his wife is waiting with their suitcases. "Let's just go," she says. But as they open the door, they stop dead in their tracks. Standing on the porch are 3 figures, each wearing a plain white mask. The camera zooms in, capturing every detail, their stillness, the way their heads tilt slightly, as if observing the couple. "What the hell do you want?" the man yells, his voice cracking. The figures don't respond. The camera jerks as the man slams the door, shuts and locks it. The final clip is most unsettling. The camera is popped up on the table, aimed at the door. The man and his wife are huddled together, whispering frantically. The audio is distorted, but you can make out snippets. They're still out there. What do we do? We should have left earlier. There's a loud bang on the door, and the wife screams. The camera's focus wavers as the man grabs it, aiming it shakily at the window. One of the masked figures is peering in, its white face illuminated by the porch light. The video ends abruptly, cutting to static as the sound of splintering wood echoes in the background. This one was worse, way worse. Halfway through, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I don't know how to explain it, but there was this overwhelming sense of dread, like something terrible was about to happen. When it finally ended, I felt physically sick. I turned on all the lights in my apartment and checked the locks on my doors and windows. I even considered calling someone, but what would I say? Hey, I watched a creepy VHS tape, and now I'm freaked out? Should have stopped there. But I didn't. The video opens in a dimly lit room. It looks like a cluttered basement, concrete walls, shelves stuffed with random books and papers, and a single exposed bulb casting harsh shadows. The camera is shaky at first, as if the person holding it is adjusting their grip. Then it steadies, focusing on an older man sitting at a table. He's in his late 50s, maybe even early 60s, with wiry grey hair and deep lines etched into his face. He looks tired, like he hasn't slept in days, and there is something about his expression haunted, almost frantic. His hands tremble as they adjust a stack of papers in front of him. "Alright," he mutters, not looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I've been right. Or maybe I've been wrong and this is all for nothing." He finally looks up, his eyes bloodshot. "My name is Richard Langley. I've been researching, investigating something for the last few years. Something that most people don't want to talk about or even believe exists." He pauses, as if struggling to find the right words. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's not some internet hoax. It's real and it's dangerous. And if you're smart, you'll stay far away from it. The camera cuts briefly, then resumes. Langley is pacing now, holding a stack of newspaper clippings. "It started with the disappearances," he says, flipping through the papers. 5 teenagers in Michigan, gone after exploring an abandoned asylum. The police ruled it a prank gone wrong, said they probably fell into a sinkhole or got lost in the woods. But no bodies were ever found. He slaps the clipping onto the table, revealing a faded headline: "Teen explorers vanish in a forest near asylum." Then, a year later, a couple on their honeymoon, found dead in their Airbnb. Brutal scene, but no suspects. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was taken. Another clipping hits the table. This one shows a grainy photo of a crime scene taped off in a forested area. Different states, no connections, at least none that anyone saw. But I did. I noticed the masks. Langley leans closer to the camera, lowering his voice. They never talk about it in the reports, but in every case there is mention of a mask. Either found at the scene or described by witnesses. White masks, plain and featureless. The video cuts again. When it resumes, Langley is sitting down, rubbing his temples. There is a map behind him, marked with pins and strings connecting various locations. "I started piecing it together," he says, gesturing at the map. "At first, it was just a hobby, something to keep my mind busy. But the more I looked, the more patterns I found. These aren't random crimes. They're coordinated, ritualistic." He pulls out a journal, flipping through pages filled with frantic handwriting and crude sketches. One sketch shows a group of figures in white masks standing in a circle. Another depicts what looks like a symbol, a triangle with an eye in the center surrounded by jagged lines. This group, cult, whatever you want to call it, they've been operating in secret for years, maybe decades. And they're not just committing crimes, they're leaving messages, warnings, for people like me. The camera zooms in on Langley's face as he speaks. I don't know what they want. Power? Chaos? Maybe they're just insane. But they're organized and they're watching. Every time I get close to something, every time I think I've found a lead, they show up. He pulls up his shirt sleeve, revealing a faint bruise on his forearm. This is from last week. I was followed home after meeting a source. Guy in a mask jumped me in on my driveway, didn't say a word, just hit me and ran. Langley looks directly into the camera, his expression grim. I'm not safe. And if you're watching this, you are not safe either. The video cuts again. This time Langley is visibly shaken. His hands fumble as he stacks papers and folders on the table. I was going to stop, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I was going to let it go, but then I found this. He holds up a photograph. The photograph reveals a blurry image of a group of people standing in the woods. All of them are wearing white masks. This was taken near the asylum where those kids disappeared. Look closely. The camera focuses on a figure at the edge of the group. It's hard to tell in the grainy photo, but it looks like they're holding something. A chain maybe, or a rope. They are real, Langley says, and they're growing. I don't know how many there are, but it's more than I thought. The final segment of the video is the most disturbing. Langley is back at the table. He's breathing heavy. He looks like he's been crying. They know I'm onto them, he says. They've been outside my house. Last night I heard footsteps on the porch. This morning, I found a mask on my doorstep. He picks up a plain white mask and holds it in front of the camera. This is their warning. I think they're coming for me. He sets the mask down and leans forward, his voice urgent. But before they do, I need to tell you what I found. I need you to understand. There's a loud bang off camera, and Langley freezes. What was that? He whispers, his eyes darting towards the noise. The camera shakes as he stands and moves toward the sound. The video cuts briefly, then resumes with the camera lying on its sides, pointed at the floor. Langley's voice is muffled, followed by the sound of a struggle. A moment later, a hand reaches down and picks up the camera. The last thing the video shows is a man in a white mask staring into the lens. He doesn't speak, but his breathing is heavy, almost animalistic. The screen goes black. This last tape, Investigator, was the shortest, but it left the biggest impact. By the time it was over, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely eject the tape. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. It wasn't just creepy, it was disturbing, horrifying. And the worst part was, it felt like it wasn't a story. It felt like evidence. I don't know why, but I called the police. I told them I had something they needed to see and gave them a vague explanation about finding the tapes in a thrift shop. They said they'd send someone over, but it would be a while. While I waited, I started to feel like I was being watched. At first, I thought I was just paranoid. I sat in my living room trying to distract myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement outside. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Then I saw them. There were 3 figures standing across the street, barely visible under the flickering streetlights. They were wearing plain, white masks, featureless like blank canvases. They weren't moving, just standing there staring at my apartment. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding. A few minutes later I checked again. They were closer now, standing on the sidewalk in front of my building. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 again, telling them to hurry. The last few minutes felt like hours. The figures kept getting closer, moving slowly but deliberately. By the time the police arrived, they were standing just outside my door. As soon as I heard the sirens, they were gone. Just like that. No sound, no movement. 1 second they were there, the next they weren't. The officers didn't find anything. They took the tapes and promised to look into them, but I could tell they didn't take me seriously. It's been weeks since that night, but I still can't shake the feeling that I shouldn't have watched those tapes. I've started noticing strange things. Cars I don't recognize parked near my building, unfamiliar faces in my neighborhood. I don't know who those people were or what they wanted, but I can't stop thinking about the tapes. Were they just random recordings, or were they something more? Evidence, like I thought? A warning? All I know is whoever made them is still out there. And they're watching.